Okay everyone, what we're looking at here is the wheel dolly. That is an extra extension you can pay for when you get your tower garden, and I'm just going to show you through the very basic setup for this. It's going to be relatively straightforward, as there's only the circular platform, there's the 4 wheels that attach on, and then there's a plethora of screws and such that you'll simply need to use to put it all together. And I'm going to do that one by one, and I'll show you what that looks like as we go. Hey guys, okay, so what I want to mention here is that once you line up the wheel to the actual slots inside the base, one of the things you're going to notice is that these guys here, one side is flat, the other side has a little inner rubber part. You want to make sure that the flat piece is going down, facing the base, because what will happen is when you're screwing this in, it will actually stop beyond that point, and here you're going to need to use a little wrench to actually force it through that inner rubber seal, which is there to maintain extra security and sturdiness for this. And you're going to do this across all 4 of the slots in each wheel, and repeat this for the individual 4 wheels. So what that'll look like, just one more time, is you have the screw with the little washer. The screw goes in, washer goes on top, and you screw that part with the rubber part facing down, and that's it. Helps to have your fingers on the bottom supporting it so there's no twisting. You want to tighten them right away, fully, so you can realign if necessary. Tighten them fully in the end. So there's the finished assembly for the wheelie dolly. And next you're going to add to the actual tower garden itself. You'll get a box that looks like this once opened, with all the stuff inside. These are going to be the support rods that are going to be used for holding the different modules up at the top of the tower. This here is the actual base, or rather the top of the base, that's going to be enclosing the unit where the water is stored. And inside that you'll see the individual modules, and inside there is also going to be the tubes for feeding the water up to the tower. This one's actually for draining the tower when needed. This one is for connecting the water from the pump to the feed chute in the tower itself. Now inside the tower will also be the pH balance kits, both the positive and the negative, when you need to either make your water more alkaline or more acidic. This here is the pump that is going to be used in the tower. And this here is the timer, and we'll go into detail about that later, because there is a specific way that we program it so that it feeds the water on and off as necessary for the tower. This here is just going to be the lid that's going to go on top of the covering for the base. This is the actual end piece that's going to cover the top of the tower. And that's just a shower cap, as they call it. This is the pH test kit that comes with the tower garden, which is required in order to make sure that the water in the base is at the appropriate pH levels. and this is just a cup that also comes along with it. And we'll go into details for that later when we have to actually put the water in the tank. Lastly is the actual basin, which is this here. It's recommended that it holds about 20 gallons of water. And as you'll see, the base will sit right on top of the dolly. Okay, now we're going to be working on the top here of the base, which is where the first module is already attached to. We have to insert these rods through this in order to secure all the modules. So what you do is you take the end that has the two wings here and you take off one wing and one of the washers. Now this is going to go over top here, and there are sections on the inside that are labeled A and B. You're going to want to go to one that's labeled section A on the inside part. So that's on the inside of the one labeled A, and then from underneath you're going to install the other washer and wing and tighten it from both sides. We're then going to repeat that process for the second tubular here. And you'll just install it on the opposite A where this rod is. And that's it. Now on the bottom end again of the base here, you're going to install one end just by screwing it in by hand here of the water feed tube. And just do it until it's fully tight. Next thing you'll do is you'll tighten the other end of the water pump into the feed tube here, and you'll just do that by hand. Once that screwing in part is done, you're going to run the other end here of the wire for the pump, feed that through the hole in the tower by feeding it here. Now you're going to want to position the pump here on this end, right where the wire actually feeds out, because that's the most easily accessible from the hole here in case you need to reach for this to clean the pump at any point. There are 4 suction cups in the pump, so you want to make sure you press that down and that it's secured right to the side here on the bottom, but as close to the side as possible. Next, the instructions do say for you to tie a knot over here so that there's no risk of any water leaking out and running to the end of the plug. So we'll just do that. that looks just like that. Now there's two nuts like this, one on each of the top of the rods here, so you're going to have to take those out in order to insert the rest of the modules. For the next tower sections, we're going to be doing it interchangeably between A and B. On the inside, there are little letters saying A and B's. So the first one starts at A, the next one is going to be in the holes that's labeled B here. Then you're going to want to play with this so that they are fully inserted into each other, because if you don't do that, you're going to struggle at the end when we're trying to close the final seals. Now we're going to grab our next module, and this time we're back to A. Next one, we're switching again back to B. You really want to make sure that you're locking these as you go. Our fifth module, we're back to A. Ordinarily we'd be finishing here, but I actually have an extension kit which adds 2 more modules, so we're going to add those attachment rods right now. So normally we'd be finished here, but because I have the extension kit which adds 2 more modules, we're going to be inserting that next. And it comes with its own rods for extending the supports, but you have to insert the 6th module before that. So we're going to make sure that the alignment continues, and the next one will be B. Now it's going to be a little tricky here for this part because it's so tight at the end of the other metal rods, but we have to screw the fat end here of these rods into it in order to secure the rest. In fact, it might actually be helpful to have a second person here to pressure on the modules to release any slack. That way someone else can tighten these ones. Now we're going to insert the 7th and final module. The final part here is installing the head here, and this guy is going to make sure that the space is on top and the bottom piece here is what's going to face downwards. And again we continue the alignment. So this is the bottom piece that's going to go on top here, and you just have to line up the rods with the 2 holes that are on the bottom. After some playing around, then you wedge the top end, then you're going to take the 2 final wings and attach that to the ends and make a tight hold. want to draw your attention to is up here at the very top. These are the wings that you have to screw on to secure everything. Now this part is hard because you have to make sure that there's no gaps in between here, and the only way to accomplish that is to press down on this as you're tightening these guys. And when you do so, you should be able to have just a little bit left over of the rod sticking out. The final step here is adding on the lid right on top. And that's it. So with the tower garden all set up, one of the things we need to make sure is that it's going to be leveled, because this will affect the irrigation of the water going down. If it's on an incline, that's going to give you some problems. So you want to use one of these guys to make sure that it's as leveled as you can possibly get it. And I had to actually, in my case, put a little strip over here of wood underneath this one side of the wheels, because the backyard deck is just on a bit of an incline. So you do want to make sure you measure that before you actually proceed ahead. Okay, next thing we're going to do is put in the net pots, so that this is where the rock walls of our sprouts are going to sit in. These are pretty easy to put in. All you need to do is notice that there is one end where there's no ledge, so that's the end that's going to go on the inside. You pinch it just like that, insert it into the hole, and you pinch it so that it helps slide it in completely. You'll notice that you can't pull it out or anything like that, and when it's fully inserted, and the rim will line up with the bottom here of the entry point. It's very important that this is in all the way, otherwise the root systems of the sprouts won't be able to actually receive the water that trickles down. Voila, all done. Now I want to show you guys a little technique that I decided to use, because as a non-gardener I might not recognize some of the things as they grow. So what I've done is I have 7 modules altogether. I'm writing on a sheet of paper module 1, module 2, module 3, and so on, and I'm labeling each insert with a letter. So here we have A, B, C, D, and you get the idea. So I have these lettered labels as well as the module numbers written on paper. That way I can know exactly what's growing where. And now we're on to our final attachment component for the tower garden, and that's the tomato cage. It does come with all the instructions, and it's fairly relatively simple to put together. You got the 3 central rings there, you got 12 support rods, and then 4 securing rods as well that would be used to attach to the top of the tower garden shower cap. However, if you have the extension kit, this part will not be able to be used. And they also supply a small number of little ties that they say you can use with the base and the lid of the base to secure it. However, I just use screws and in place of those things. And now we're going to go on and set these up in the tower. So for beginning installing the tomato cage, you use these rods. There's 12 of them in total, and you insert the first 4 into the little slots that are in the upward grooves here on the base of the tower, and there's 4. Just make sure they're nicely inserted. Then we're going to put on our first ring. When putting in the rings, you just want to make sure that the little grooves are facing up. Next 4. Second ring. like I just did, you want to be careful how much pressure you put on these. Make sure you isolate the pressure. Last 4. Final rank. So we have the 3rd ring on. Now if you didn't have the extension kit here, then these guys, there's 4 of them, would clip onto the end here and attach to the top of the shower cap. However, since I have the extension, these ones don't really have much of a use here, or I may somehow find a way to incorporate them for stability. To just play with it, actually. I could insert them. So you can insert them and just keep them pressed up against the tower to give it just a little bit of added stability. You could also perhaps string and loop the string through the holes on the inserts here and further secure it around the tower that way. Really up to you. So that's pretty much it for setting up the tomato cage. Literally did it in about 2 or 3 minutes. So it's very easy to do. So this is the timer that comes in order to have the water in the garden running at whatever interval you set it. So I'm going to be setting this for every 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off. And the way to do that first is you open this and you just churn this so that the hour matches whatever the hour the time it is when you turn this on. So if right now is 6 o'clock, I will churn this to the 6 p.m. slot. After that, there's little individual buttons here that you have to slide. So when you slide them to the outside, that's when the timer is going to be on. And when you leave them on the inside, that's when the timer will have the thing shut off. So you're going to have one out, one in, one out, one in, and doing that all the way around. That's pretty much all I need to do for this. You leave it on timer for it to run on that schedule. To run continuously, you leave it on. And that's it. Okay guys, so with the reservoir all filled up and your tower in place, the next thing we're going to be doing is adding the tower tonic solutions, A and B, to the water. And what they recommend, if you do have it as a full base loaded with the 20 gallons, then they recommend using a half dose of each during the initial filling. And then for future fillings, go for the full 400. Now with this, it says to utilize 20 milliliters for each gallon. So if you calculate 20 gallons, just times that by 20 milliliters and you get 400. That'll be your regular dose. So for today we're going to do 200 milliliters and just have, you can use the measuring cup they provide. I'm using a glass one though. And 200 milliliters of each tonic A and tonic B inserting into the reservoir. So you want to make sure you shake this up really well before you use it. And make sure you got some protective gloves on just to avoid any irritation to the skin. You also want to make sure that you're adding them in separately. So we're adding in A and then we'll add B afterwards. Now you want to be doing a good stir here because you want to make sure that the solution diffuses throughout the entire water. So I'm taking a wooden spoon and just going to get in there and try to swish it around a bit so that we can get that happening. This is important because when we do our pH testing to make sure that the water is in the range that it needs to be to support plant growth, then we might not get accurate results if we're testing the water that isn't fully diffused yet with the solution. So now we're going to take a sample of the water using the pH kit that came. There's a little vial, and it recommends that you wash this out a few times before using it. So we're going to take 5 milliliter sample of the water here. So now that we have our sample here, we're going to be adding 5 drops of the pH tester into the 5 milliliter solution. Then we close this up, give it just a little bit of a shake. Seems the reaction is pretty immediate. If we test this using the color palette that comes with it, then we can see that this is a 4.5, so it's actually quite acidic, which means I have to add probably a bit of the pH up in order to bring this into a bit more of an alkaline state. Now the recommended pH level for this is between 5.0 and 7.0, so I'm going to try and aim for about 6.0, which will be about this green color here. So right now we're going to be adding the pH up or base to the water, and I'm going to start with about 2 tablespoons of that, swirl it again, and then we'll take another sample and we'll see what it's changed to. And what we do then is we just keep adding or subtracting. If we go over, then we would use the pH down if we go over our desired outcome. So like with the other solutions, you want to shake up the pH before you actually use it. You want to make sure you have gloves on because you do not want to cause damage to your skin. So the instructions do indicate to try first 1 tablespoon. I'm going to go about 1.5 tablespoons just because this really was quite acidic. And again, we have to really give it a good whirl around to make sure that it gets evenly diffused into the water. So we'll do another 5 milliliter sample. And again, put in 5 more drops of the pH tester. As you can see, it's actually still about the same color as before, registering at 4.5 pH. So I think it's safe to say I need to add quite a bit more of the pH up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and essentially just play with it until we get to the about 6.5 mark. That's what I'm aiming for. And perhaps in the future I'll consider other alternatives to the water, because clearly reverse osmosis water is very acidic in nature. So get back to you when that part is complete. Took some doing, but I was finally able to get this to about a pH of 6. Right there. So the water was very acidic. I actually had to use about 6 or 8 tablespoons of the pH up. So if you ever think about using reverse osmosis water, you might want to keep in mind you will need a lot more of the pH up solution. So now that this is at the correct pH level, now we're just going to set up the final details, and then this will be ready to go.